Hi,
Hello, Nate.
how are you?
Good. Nice
Good.
to see you.
Good. So today we're going to talk about kids' injuries. One of the things that I've been getting over the last few weeks is getting kids injured in sport, and so that was why I thought, wow, what a great opportunity for to have Etienne on the show. And as you may not know, Etienne is the osteopath at Elite Personal Training. Etienne and I met probably, it feels like a lifetime ago.
2.5 years ago?
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years
Yeah, maybe even a little bit longer. Is that and what I found with Etienne is like with his osteopathy. If you don't really know what osteopathy in the layman's terms, and he'll probably smack me over the head because I'm going to say this, is I find osteopathy a cross between a physiotherapy and a chiropractor. So this person sort of handles all of the both ends of the spectrum. And big reason why I started working with an osteopath in the first place was because I got injured through my neck and I couldn't get in to see my physio. So I decided to see an osteopath, and it was a game changer. So, going forward, yes, I got that there are as many different types of medical practitioners out there, but I find an osteopath really, really effective in being able to treat injuries. And that's why I wanted to work with Etienne first. The second one is he's also helped a number of my clients get better too. So, having him part of the team has made a massive difference to the ability to not only to rehabilitate my clients if and when they get injured, but also create a preventative measure to reduce the chance of them getting injured as well. So, that being said, welcome, Etienne.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think what Nate tried to explain in a clumsy way, I would say, an osteopath will be a holistic manual practitioner. Has the necessary medical knowledge to being able to consider all the systems of the body, so mainly musculoskeletal, like a physio and a chiropractor, but also the neurologic system, gastrointestinal, lymphatic, etc., etc. That allows osteopath to have a proper overview and being able to pinpoint and find out what are the origin of the pain. We usually present with symptoms of neck pain, like neck often, or hamstring tightness. But in the case, for example, of Nate, his tightness in his hamstrings are quite reoccurring, if you don't mind me telling your life about to the people, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
And so what I wondered as the osteopath is what is predisposing Nate to find himself in such a situation, having his hamstring quite tight and restricting his training on a daily basis. And usually we need to find that factor, what caused his hamstring to be often in that abnormal and inflamed state. Most of the time for Nate, as an example, it's his pelvis being slightly imbalanced over time doing weight-bearing activities. We all prefer one side towards another. We all dominance on one side rather than another. And for him, it kind of shifts his pelvis, and he applies more weight on one side. So when he's going to do a lunge on one side, the hamstring is going to have, for example, a shorter distance to contract on, and over time, over a few months, he will develop some tightness. So yeah, that's an example of how an osteopath will try to dig in and find the origin of the pain in order for the pain not to be reoccurrent, and also fix the whole problem basically. Today, however, we were talking recently with Nate, and we're all aware that over the last decade, all of us adults have been more and more sedentary in our lifestyle. We've seen that our posture is not doing well at all with that more sedentary lifestyle, and we develop some pain due to this, and we manage it more or less well. If you see also a manual practitioner, or if you exercise on the side, you kind of counterbalance the things a minimum, let's say. However, for another part of the population, this increased sedentary lifestyle has a much bigger impact, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It's how kids have been a bit forgotten in this interval of, I don't know, 5 years, and we forgot that the impact on their life, on their body, of that sedentary lifestyle is much bigger than it would be on us. Over the last 2-3 years, for example, I think the ratio between traumatic injury that I've treated kids with against the ratio of postural injury has balanced itself, and now I think 70% of the time when I see someone under 18 years old, it's most likely due to postural reason and almost no more for traumatic reasons. So,
Why do you think that is?
well, especially in Hong Kong, for example, we've seen that kids have been either studying on iPads, computers, and also for the last 2 years they've been majorly studying at home, not necessarily in the best of the setup, basically. They've been less active with less physical activity to balance things out, and it has impacted them a lot. So I see kids today with spinal issues that I would normally used to see in someone who is, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 60 years old. Increased spinal curves with muscle weaknesses, inflammation here and there in certain joints that are put under pressure because of this poor posture. And
So do you find that the poor posture actually is the thing that's putting the stress on the joint, or is it because they're not doing enough movement and exercise, and so when they do go play sport, they're putting more pressure and stress on the joint?
It'll be a combination of both. Your body needs to move, and if you're in pain most of the time, movement is going to help. Your body needs to move, and it's when we start being immobile and stuck in a certain position, maintained for a long time, that's when the body is not going to enjoy it. To make it into a very simplistic metaphor, it's like having a car and never using it. The less you use it, if you use it after 6 months, it's probably going to make a weird noise, or you probably want to go to the garage and get it fixed. It's if you don't use it regularly,
You lose it.
You'll lose it, exactly.
Yeah.
And the body is the same way, but for kids, the big difference is that they're growing. And another simplistic metaphor, if you put a plant in your garden and you put it slightly in diagonal, it's going to grow that way. And a kid, it will be the same. If you make him sit 8 or 10 hours in front of a computer, through school, through video games and things like
It's
this.
funny how you say make them sit in front of the computer, because I find my kid wants to sit in front of the computer whether I make him or not.
Exactly. Well, part of it is school forcing it. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Then,
true.
part of it is maybe kids increasingly spending time on computer for social time, if we can call it social time, to play video games.
Have you heard of a term, and it seems to be becoming more popular, called text neck? Text neck. What's that?
Text neck is a perfect. We'll go up and down the body. We'll start with the neck.
Yeah, let's start there.
Text neck is basically coming from what is called a phone usage, increased phone usage. And if you look at the phone number in what you send it in the line or in the NPR, text neck basically is you getting rid of all the segment of the cervical spine because you don't need them for what you're going to do. And it's just flexing forward like this. You only use 1 or 2 segments of the neck being used basically. What this will do is it's a photo but what this will do on the long term is that your body will understand or get that, well, you don't really care about that upper part of the neck, so
Yeah.
you'll put all the pressure at the base of the neck, at the junction with the thoracic cage. This part, this joint specifically, will at some point get inflamed because it's dealing with a lot of weight bearing, it's dealing with most of the pressure. Don't forget that your head is between 5 and 7 kg. So like that joint alone has to take that weight and has to ask his muscular group to also take care of that weight. Because as soon as I look at my phone like this, I get out of my axis of gravity. I can't rest my head anymore on my spine. Like,
So what does that cause?
what is it cause?
What's the injuries?
Long term, well, the upper neck becomes a bit dysfunctional because you're not using it, so it's not mobile. You lose range of motion. You accumulate tension in the upper part of the neck as well, in the small muscle linking the base of the skull to the first two vertebrae. Those muscles are called suboccipital muscle, and in this case, if they become inflamed or tight because of the dysfunction, they will create what we call cervicogenic headaches, or you might know the term tension types headaches, for example.
Right, so it can cause headaches.
Exactly. Consequence number one, consequence number two is that this joint here at the base of the neck that is doing the whole job for 8 people will get inflamed. You will decrease the rotation of your disc, so your disc will degrade itself faster, will get dehydrated, so you'll end up with arthritic development much earlier than you should have been.
Then it should happen. So you're guaranteed of some point in your life, because of all the computer work we do.
From 25 years old anyway, we all start to degrade our structures, whether it's cartilage or bony surfaces or things like this, from 25 years old.
Yeah.
So yes, we all end up with squished and tired disc at the end of the day, but that should come as late as possible.
Yeah.
Not in that situation. And
you made a good point before as well. As we're growing into this position.
Exactly.
And I mean, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have this accessibility to computers and the sedentary lifestyle we've all been leading over the last 2 years, especially. So I wonder that is part of the reason why, you know, you've been seeing so much more people with this text neck than in the past. And it's a really good point that you made is that we're still, the kids are still growing.
Yeah.
So if they're still growing and you're growing into this, like a plant is growing into that sort of slant, what can we, what can we do to sort of, because like my son, he's on a computer at school. That's his thing. That's what he works through. He works through a laptop.
And he's going through, therefore, the same thing as we're going through if you work on a computer about 8-12 hours a day. He's going through what we call an upper cross syndrome. It's the fact that all the structures, like the neck, as we said, going forward, the shoulders closing themselves, we are going forward and deviating more and more from our straight axis of gravity, basically. And
just for those people who don't know what an upper cross syndrome, an upper cross syndrome is that person that's sort of slouched forward and then they've got their forward head posture going on. So that's what an upper cross syndrome is.
And basically your muscle, instead of doing a basic function, which is contraction, in order to maintain yourself straight or achieve a movement, your muscle kind of become a bit like ligaments. A ligament stops a movement, like a ligament here will stop his finger from going further away.
Yeah.
We will use those muscles at the back and in the neck as in the same way we would use a ligament. Those muscles are just going to contract minimally to stop us from going forward. This, on the long term, will not only weaken majorly muscular structures, but you'll develop pains from it, tiredness, headaches is one of it, as we said, but just, we all know that tension that we can have at the end of the day in our shoulders. And that can develop majorly. Maintain it for a long time, you can find out.
And you also mentioned before as well that the biomechanics of the neck would also be off as well, because instead of being, the curve has got a natural curve in it anyway, but because you're actually migrating it forward, you actually run the risk of pinching nerves and the neck going into spasm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's when we take the risk of including our neurologic system in the process, is that, as we said, if we close ourselves like this, if the neck is deviating, if the muscles are more tense because they have to do more than they should, we take the risk of compressing some other structures in our body, and like Nate said, the nervous system is going to be the first one impacted. You have nerve exiting at each level of your spine, at each vertebrae. make that part of the spine slightly compressed because of your posture, make that part of the spine also put under tension because of all the muscle being pulled and tight, you will likely impinge, compress on a nerve, and that will have a bigger impact on you. You can develop neurologic symptoms such as pins and needles, for example, in your hands.
Oh, absolutely.
If the nerve is compressed at the neck level or at the shoulder level. You can have numbness as well. If the nerve is responsible for sensation, and if it's compressed, well, you won't be able to feel in the area that he is disturbing. You can have a...
So I got that there is a lot of stuff going on there, and I think, you know, if I was on that side of the camera, I'd be like, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? So what can we do? I mean, like for me, one of the exercises that I give some of my clients is what I call a wall lean. Is where I'm just leaning against the wall here, and then what I do is I just bring my feet forward a little bit, and then I just lean against the wall like that. Now I don't bring my feet too far forward, just because the neck is like, as you know, is like it doesn't have many neural fibers through there. So I want to be able to just put a little bit of lean on it, but over time, because I'm, you know, as you said, if I'm pulling my head forward all the time, I want to be able to pull it back. That's just simple. And then the other one is just like stretching through those sternocleidomastoids, or you don't know what the sternocleidomastoid is, but these are those muscles where Etienne was saying to pull their neck forward. It's just stretching those, but then also strengthening the back as well.
Exactly.
Would that be?
So one of the first things to do is, if it's not been a long time that you're in that situation, is to relearn how to activate those muscles properly again. And as Ned said, it's just by doing basic normal movements. So the shoulder blade retraction is one of them. Tucking your chin in is one of them. It's basically contracting your muscle properly again, instead of stretching them and using them as a rope to maintain us kind of straight. We are going to contract them and recreate muscle memory and proper activation of our muscular system.
Yeah, another one that I use with just not only myself but also clients is it's called a Swiss ball upper abdominal thoracic or middle back stretch, where I lie over the ball backwards over the ball, just to sort of, and I just lie there, you know, just for 1 to 2 minutes and just lie there. Now, I do find sometimes that may cause a little bit of dizziness, so if it does cause dizziness, then stop it.
This is why when you do it, I would advise to hold your neck, because your neck doesn't want to go in extension. That's what we're trying to prevent. However, what Nate is achieving through this exercise is that he's putting his thoracic cage in extension. That is constantly
that's a good point.
So if you don't have access to a manual therapist, at the beginning you can just use like a Swiss ball like this or a foam roller in order to, instead of working on the muscular groups, you're going to work directly on your spine, and that flexed position that you are, basically you're going to counter it by rolling over Swiss ball, rolling over in extension a foam roller. So the two approaches, basic approaches, is, as we said, reusing your muscle the correct way by just mobilizing them like they should be. And second is just directly working on your spinal curves by going against what you have engendered over the years, basically. And what's concerning me is that for you, for myself as well, the worst case scenario is that we have pains and we need to take care of it, and that's it. But for kids, there's the consequence of those changes. Some of those changes might be permanent. For you and I, they're not permanent. If I make an effort, if I get myself treated, if I exercise, I will be able to solve most of the problem.
That's a really good point.
More or less easily. But for a kid,
because if he's growing into that,
exactly,
then it's even harder to be able to get them back out of it as an adult. Okay,
Unfortunately for us, and fortunately for us as well, our body has a great way of adapting and compensating. And therefore, if this is that the kid likes to be in that position and spends most of his time in that position, it doesn't mobilize certain area, he will just grow that way, he will keep those functions, and he will adapt the structure based on those functions.
So that's a really good question, because the thing is like if you're really growing into that posture and your body starts to just adapt to that posture, would that still be able to give that child the optimal I mean, obviously, the optimal performance or the optimal function in that posture because their body's adapted to it? Or will this person, like you said before, is like when they go into the, you know, when they haven't been used for a while, and and then you take it out on the road again, like, you know, we're back playing sport, and you take it full speed. I wonder whether, because we've been sitting down for a long period of time or not using it, when we take it full speed, we start to get road wobbles or we start to break down.
That's where the non-specific, what we call the non-specific problems, the postural issues that we have, can have a big impact on specific injuries. You spend most of your time in a sedentary position, and as soon as you're going to go back to normal activity, I don't know, playing rugby, swimming, or things like this, your body will be less adapted to this kind of activity. It should actually.
So just for you guys out there, the difference between non-specific and specific injuries is?
Non-specific is usually something you develop chronically, and
so it's chronic.
It's like an umbrella of little factors, risk factors, putting you in a state of using your body in a dysfunctional way.
Posture.
Yeah.
Okay, poor posture.
Poor posture is the perfect example.
And then specific?
Specific is me playing basketball against Nate and spraining my ankle.
Yeah. But then it's a really good point what you made is that, yes, did they sprain the ankle because there was already some sort of postural or muscle imbalance there that's caused them?
If I spend most of my day in front of a computer, and after 3 months of me being at home on my computer, I decide to play basketball with Nate. Well, I'm used to not really use my legs anymore. I'm weight bearing on my lower back because this is what I do on my chair. And therefore, when I'm going to play basketball, obviously I'll need to weight bear on my hips, on my thighs, and I won't be able to do that anymore. So I will have a big lack of stability in my lower extremities.
Yeah.
Me putting more pressure on my ankles that are unstable, and me more likely to sprain my ankle because I would have applied my weights too much and incorrectly on my ankle, while my ankle being not supported by enough muscular structures.
And also, just to give you a heads up, is when you jump in the air, and you don't have to jump very high. I think it's like 70 centimeters. The amount of weight that you put through your body is 3 times your body weight. So you imagine if your kid is jumping up in the air doing basketball and then he lands down on that ankle, he's putting 3 times of his body weight through that ankle.
And he doesn't have also the reflex of shock absorbing his weight, because he's gonna land and he's gonna have to lose. He lost the reflex of bending his knee, contracting his thighs, putting the weight on his hips.
Yeah.
Like you should land basically. He will probably not pay attention to this. Land with a more or less straight leg, not supported by muscles, and putting all the pressure on the joints, which is what you don't want to do.
Yeah. So when you work with these guys, when you work with these kids, are you able to sort of fix that in here, or do they need to go away and do some work for themselves? Like, you know, whether that's, you know, working on that stability or
you need a combination of the two. So for a kid, it's very important to readdress a proper spinal integrity. By that I mean making sure that the spine is redirected towards the right axis. Make sure that the spinal curve.
You mean good posture?
Exactly.
Good posture for that person.
Making sure that the postural curves are what they should be, and then behind this one, this is fixed manually. It's important for the person, the kid in that specific situation, to start mobilizing his muscle again to make sure that those changes will remain as such and that it won't go back to his original state.
So what are the, you know, I mean, the big thing about this talk today is sort of the 5 common ones that you get from kids. What are the 5 common injuries? Obviously that text neck, I'm finding a lot. Yeah. I mean, I find with my son, he was injuring his knee.
Yeah.
You know, when he was playing soccer because of lack of use.
So as you said with your son, Benji, there's a lot of kids end up with what we call joint effusion. It's when the capsule inside your joint gets swollen under pressure. There's an inflammation occurring because there's too much pressure has been put on the joint, and that's usually caused in kids because they've lost the habit of mobilizing their muscles correctly because of a sedentary lifestyle, and therefore when they're going to take an impact or when they're going to run, much more is going to put on the cartilage in terms of weights and forces than it should be, because you're going to put on your joints what you can't put on your muscles, basically.
What other ones have you found?
Joint effusion. You can have also the development of a kyphosis. Kyphosis is basically when it becomes chronic, it's the maintained flexion in the thoracic cage. This is also the case in kids very often, and it's also impacting the digestive system. Picture yourself being like this in that flex position because of your lifestyle. You lose a lot of abdominal space. You will compress your gastrointestinal system. And
because I always thought it was, I always thought that it would have more impact on their oxygen uptake as of being able to breathe.
Both.
But you're saying that it also affects their gastrointestinal tract, their digestion.
Basically, yes.
Wow.
We call going to the toilets bowel movement, and it's not for nothing. It's because in order to digest, we need movement here. We need movement to going through our gastrointestinal organs. If there's none given, if there's no space given for movement, and if there's compression at the same time, we won't be able to digest properly anymore. Second, as you said, it will have some respiratory consequences. Because as you do this, I don't know if you know what the diaphragm is, but it's one of the major respiratory muscle. When we tell you to belly breathing, that's basically using the diaphragm. It's an umbrella-shaped muscle at the base of your thoracic cage that is opening like this as you breathe in order to enlarge the thoracic cage and give you more lung capacity, and then pushing up when you breathe out. If it's compressed basically by your posture, well, you won't have that major respiratory muscle functioning anymore. You will end up with a lot of chest tightness as well, and decrease basically respiration.
So what do you do to treat that, and what exercises could you recommend?
Well, the same thing as we said earlier. The main problem here in that situation is again
trying to get that back open, right?
Is again your posture, and
What about like I remember when I was 13, I remember hurting my back, my lower back.
Yeah.
And are you getting any kids through that have got issues with their lower back? And why is that? Because it's too much curve, not enough curve, not enough activation of the.
When you bend forward, one way to erect yourself basically, or not fall forward even more, is to contract the lower back. If I contract my lower back here, a bit like when I do
so it overcompensates.
Yeah. If I contract my lower back, well, the whole spine will follow it. So it's a bit of a cheat code. If I have a poor posture and I'm falling forward, I can also overuse my lower back in order to maintain myself.
Put it back into the alignment. Yeah. I find that a lot. You have this kyphosis at the top, that upper cross, what you said, and then you have this big curve down the bottom there to sort of balance them back up again. Yeah.
The problem with this is that it's going to create a lot of tightness in your lower back muscle.
Yeah.
Your lower back will become stiffer and stiffer over time.
Yeah.
And the less a part of the body move, or has the capacity to move, the less it can take weights. It's like a shock absorber. When you take a shock, it moves and absorbs the shock. If it doesn't move, it's going to break.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We end up with our lower back not being able to move that much, which is a shame because the lower back is usually the place where we put the most weight. And we end up putting ourselves exposed to a lot of injury, a lot of lower back pain, whether it's muscle tightness or it's disc injury because we put in too much weight here.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty obvious how that puts a lot of stress on your back. So what would you do? What would you do to be able to correct that? I mean, for me, I always say it always comes to the stretch and the strengthening. And so, someone who has that, that back, who's just got that big curve in their lower back, is working on their lower abdominals to through, and then of course stretching the tight erector spinae at the back here. So that way, you can get from this, and you'll see this with kids. I find this with boys mainly, is this just trying to stretch these muscles at the back here, and then strengthen these lower muscles here. And I do tests on people, and you do the test as well. It's just a test under the lower abdominals, and generally 9 times out of 10 they fail that test. So if you do have that lordosis, other than what I just said, what else would you do?
I would put movement in the area for sure.
Okay, yeah.
You want to increase the mobility in the area. The more mobility, as I said, there is, the more likely you'll be able to take up that weight. As Nate said as well, the second thing you can do is strengthen the antagonist muscle. The antagonist muscle is going to be the muscle doing the opposite function. So we're going to work, for example, on the core muscles that are great in order to weight bear, to maintain stability in the lower back. The more you have strength in your cores, the less you will put weight on your spinal column. You want to reinforce a bit your glutes and know how to move.
Good call. Yes, glutes.
You want to learn how to put weight on your glutes.
For those who don't know what glutes are, it's your butt. Your bum.
Yeah, exactly.
Your buttocks.
The hip joint is one of the most stable because it's very deep. The cavity of the joint is very deep, so it's extremely stable. And it's also provided with the glutes, the butt muscles, that are one of the strongest in our body as well. So if I put too much weight on the lower back and my lower back is tired of it and inflamed because of it, I will teach myself to put a bit more weight on my hips, where I have more capacity basically to handle that weight and handle those functions.
Yeah.
That's another solution.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just sort of summarize. Like I said, you have the text neck. You got the knee and the upper cross syndrome, the knee and the ankles, and of course that lower back thing going on as well. What I'm sort of hearing is like you're getting that movement through that joint. Like I said, I've always used osteopathy as a way of being able to get myself out of pain and getting my children out of pain. But that part where I was mentioning before is really being able to get this child or this growing human being into a position of good posture first before I start teaching them, the fundamentals of squat, lunge, bend, push, pull, twist and gait. Then that way you can start. You've got a good foundation before you send them out there. And this last 2 years has been incredibly tough to be able to get any child to go out and move more often, because in Hong Kong it always tends to be you send them to soccer on a Monday and a Friday, you send them to tennis on a Tuesday and a Thursday. It's all structured stuff. But how do we get these kids so that way we can get them back into sport, moving correctly again, so that way we can first of all prevent injury, and secondly optimize their performance.
I agree with you the whole way, and I think to conclude, we are all exposed to that new sedentary lifestyle more and more, unfortunately, these years. We deal with aches and pains that we sort out through treatment and through exercising. But the thing is, for kids, the consequences can be much greater.
Yeah, that was really a big eye-opener for me.
The growth will be impacted, and most of the time negatively. And in the same process, you also, the kid is also predisposing himself to get more specific traumatic injury, acute injury, because he doesn't know how to use his body in an optimal functional way.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
When that's the case for yourself, you can take your time, be lazy to treat yourself or get it sorted. But when it's about a kid, I would highly advise, if he's showing first symptoms of postural aches or first symptoms of spinal deviation, getting out of the way of a normal posture, I would most of the time always get it checked, see what can be done. There's always something that can be done. Thankfully, kids adapt very well and much faster than adults. So if the problem is pinpoint, we can manage it extremely efficiently. And
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Take care of the kids, basically.
Yeah, take care of the kids. Yeah, take care of the kids. So, hey man, thank you very much. It was an awesome chat. I mean, like, we're way over. We're like 7 minutes over. I thank you very much for being able to watch this. Whether you start at the beginning and you've fallen off and you want to watch a little bit more when you get back online again, it'll be live. It'll be not live on Facebook, but you'll be able to see it again. Or if you joined us at the beginning, you might like to go back to the beginning and just put it on 1.5 speed. That's how I do it. So you can get through it and listen to some of the things of how you can actually support your child. But thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it. For everyone out there, if they want to get hold of you, how would they get hold of you?
They can contact me either through APD's website.
You can call us.
Yeah. Call APD.
He's not very good on social media. You'll probably see this guy like once a blue moon, and that will probably be with me.
But my professional contact on APD's website, and you can contact me by WhatsApp anytime. I will always likely answer.
Yeah, so if you do want to reach out to Etienne, reach out to us, and then I think it's pretty much DM us whenever you want, and then I can connect you with Etienne and give you any questions about your son and your daughter. Not to make this whole heavy and significant, but we've got these children that are growing into adults, and right now we're living in a world that is very much more sedentary than ever before. And we need to be really wary that this person is still growing. So if you do have any issues with your son or your daughter, then do reach out to us. We're very happy to help you and answer any questions that you have. So thanks very much.
You're welcome, Nate, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you next time. Bye.